at the reading aid study questions, the second part of Plato's Euthyphro. Number one, how does Socrates arrive at the conclusion that what is loved by the gods is not what is pious? Um, it's a good question. I think that the answer to that is the beginning of the reading, where he's making this distinction between something having a certain feature because it's passively acted on, like being carried. Something is carried because something else is carrying it. It's not something is not carrying it because the thing itself is carried or something. The idea that some of the features that things have that we would describe as being true of them, they have because something else has acted on them, or acting on them. So they're passive in that respect. And what he wants to say about the pious is that, yes, the gods love what is pious, but is it pious because it is loved by the gods, or is it loved by the gods because it is pious? And he seems to just sort of say here that it is loved by the gods because it is pious, or it's dear to the gods because it's pious, or it's holy because, or it's dear to the gods because it's holy. He says here, page 2, then that which is dear to the gods, Euthyphro, is not holy, nor is that which is holy loved of God, as you affirm, but they are two different things. I mean to say that the holy, or the pious, has been acknowledged by us to be loved of God because it is holy, not to be holy because it is loved. That's the crucial distinction that he makes that we really have to see. Philosophically, maybe the most important thing that Socrates says in this dialogue, that is that what is pious is not pious because it's loved by the gods. And it's the reverse. That it's loved by the gods because it's pious. And that is not just a verbal distinction, because we see the implications of each. Say that the pious is pious because it's loved by the gods. Well, then whatever is loved by the gods would be pious, and there would be no boundaries to what could be called pious. Anything that happened to be loved by the gods would be pious. Whereas if we say the reverse, that something is loved by the gods because it is pious, then even the gods are in a certain way restricted, because the thing in itself is pious, and the gods love it because it's pious. So that notion that anything could be pious because anything could be loved by the gods is not there in the second example, because that which is pious in itself because of some feature inherently or intrinsically it has, rather than, well, it's pious because it's loved by something. It's actually quite an important distinction, I would say. Maybe not so easily, at least in the first reading, not so easily done. So number 2, what does Socrates think the relation between justice and piety is? Piety is a subset of justice, right? So that whatever is just is also pious. Right? But that there are some things which are just which are not pious, if you understand what I mean. Justice is the larger concept of which piety fits in, smaller things. So that if something is pious, of course it's also just. So it needs to be just to be pious. But justice is a wider concept that comprehends things other than piety. I think that's what he's getting at. Again, kind of saying that something like justice, things are just in themselves. They're not just because the gods love them. They're just in themselves, and the pious would then be the same way. Number 3, why, according to Socrates, does piety as attending the gods make little sense? It's one of the latter definitions that Euthyphro gives of piety in this dialogue. That is, attending to the gods or serving the gods is what makes us pious. And Socrates says, well, that doesn't make any sense. The gods are perfect beings. What do they need from us? So if piety is attending to the gods, it would seem pretty useless, again, because the gods don't need us. Right? The gods are perfect beings. They're not helped by or in some way made better by our attending to them. So he doesn't think it makes any sense. Number four, what do you think Socrates is trying to tell Euthyphro about his plan to prosecute his father? That's obviously a matter of interpretation. But I think it's, to me at least, it's pretty clear that Socrates is trying to let Euthyphro know that what he's doing is very dangerous. And it's very dangerous because he's prosecuting somebody for murder because he thinks that piety demands that he do it. But he doesn't know what piety is. That is, I think he's trying to show him that you don't know as much as you think you know about what is pious. So your assumption that what you're doing right now is pious is not founded on any kind of knowledge. But considering that it's your own father that you're prosecuting, and that might in itself be a sign of something impious to do that to one's own father, that you should probably rethink the whole thing because you're not doing it from a standpoint of knowledge. I would say that's the kind of message he's trying to send Euthyphro. Number five, what, if anything, have Socrates and Euthyphro achieved in their conversation about piety? Again, that's a matter of interpretation. Some people would say nothing. They don't come to any kind of agreement. Certainly, they don't get any kind of real, acceptable, sure definition of piety. If we're judging it on that, then maybe they haven't achieved very much. If we're judging it more pragmatically and saying that Socrates is trying to help Euthyphro clarify the things and maybe not do this foolish thing, perhaps prosecute his own father, it's a big question about whether he even has had any influence on Euthyphro. Euthyphro just kind of drops out of the conversation without any indication, and without any indication that he's rethought his actions. So it could very well be that nothing has been achieved. But that can be asked about almost any Platonic dialogue, especially ones that have the nature of Euthyphro that look into trying to define something and maybe aren't very successful, at least on the surface, in defining it. Now, maybe that there are other things that Plato was up to when he wrote this, things he was trying to do for his reader, get them thinking about a certain subject without giving them answers. That may be the most you can do for anybody philosophically. So it's really a matter of interpretation. What the whole point of something like this is.